Yo! Hey, how's everybody doing? We're playing some MTG Arena. In today's video, I want to talk about the ranking system and the Mythic rank in particular. There's a lot I like about Arena, but the ranking system, unfortunately, is not one of them. I'm going to go over my personal experience ranking to Mythic in both Limited and Constructed while going over what's wrong with it. The ranking in this video takes place in Forgotten Realms. Prior to this, I hadn't played the game for about a year, mainly because I didn't like the artwork or fantasy direction that they were taking with the game. But I came back and I was just blown away with how much fun Forgotten Realms is. It's such a fun set. I love the mechanics. Entering the dungeon, the D20 rolling, the artwork, the fantasy is just all spot on. So I definitely had some rust coming back to the game, and ranking isn't something I've really tried in the past. Previously, I mostly played unranked formats, so this was a new experience for me. So let's talk Limited. I am an infinite drafter. All that means is that I play on a free-to-play account, and I can play draft with a high enough win rate that rather than losing resources over time, you slowly gain resources over time, meaning you can draft for infinity. In the past, I mostly did best of 3, which is unranked, so I changed that and played mostly best of 1 to try to rank up to Mythic. I'm not going to go into too much detail about the draft strategies I was using, and I may make a whole other video just to talk about draft strategy. To keep it short, all I do, and what I'm sure most other infinite drafters also must do, is you follow a formula. The easy part is ranking the cards best to worst for your pack one, pick one, and then the hard part is adjusting those ranks as the draft goes on based on what you've already picked, as well as trying to figure out what the opponents on your right are playing in terms of color. So as I'm having a blast playing this awesome set, ranking up, I see the first big problem before I even get to Mythic, and that is the ability to buy rank. Now, it's not quite as obvious as a buy rank here button that you just push, but it's close. At the bottom left corner of the event screen, you will notice that there is a button, the resign button. Resigning from an event does exactly that. You fully withdraw from the event and you collect any prizes that you've earned up to that point. Now, there are no restrictions on when you can resign from an event, meaning you can draft a deck and then resign before you actually have to play it. Now, the kicker here is that there is no penalty or loss of rank when you resign from an event. So what this ultimately means is if you draft a deck that you don't like, say things didn't go your way during the draft and it's a weak deck or whatever, you can resign and just reload, start a new event, and do that as many times as you like. So on the lower end of abuse, it means that you don't have to play weak decks that you draft. Or if you take it far, it means you can cherry pick the very best decks and only play those. While it's true mediocre or even a bad deck can do well with luck and skill, your win record over a long period of time will be way better if you're only playing good decks. So with the resign reload strategy, you are essentially trading resources for a better deck, which is essentially trading resources for a better rank. So even before reaching Mythic, this concept totally killed any desire I had to try and get a high spot, like say top 10. Resigning is a huge but expensive advantage, so I doubt that it's done very much at lower ranks. At higher standings, however, it's just too big of an advantage to ignore, so I'm sure it's probably done a fair bit. Moving along, I launched myself into Mythic by winning a tournament playing a powerful black and green deck. I checked my rank and it's 1256, so a little over 1200, which is the cutoff for the qualifier. I knew I wasn't going to play the qualifier because I usually have plans on the weekend that aren't game related, but I still wanted to qualify just so I could see it on the screen and understand how it worked. So I did play another event to improve my standings enough that I would be able to qualify. I won't say anything else about the qualifiers because I doubt I'll ever try one, but I will say that I see it as basically the only reason to get Mythic rank. It's just to qualify. So the month is over, all the ranks get rolled back 2 tiers, and I get to see my cool qualified screen. At this point I'm done my playset of Forgotten Realms from all the drafting, so I figured I'd try something new, ranking in Constructed and comparing it to how Limited was. Without getting too sidetracked, I don't like net decking. It's the main reason why I don't like competitive Constructed formats. So I just threw together 4 decks and dived in at Bronze Tier 4. I played a historic giant deck with a lot of control elements, a historic sacrifice deck with a lot of food, and 2 standard aggro decks, mono red and mono green. I modified all 4 decks a lot as I went on, partly based on what the opponents I was facing were playing, but also because I would see a lot of really good cards that I hadn't seen before and didn't have, and I just added them to my decks. Within a very short time of playing, I noticed the next big problem with the ranking system. It's definitely the elephant in the room when it comes to questioning the whole structure of Arena, and that is the matchmaker. Anybody who's played Arena, even just a small amount, will be able to tell that there are elements in the game that do not exist in real life. Your starting hand, for example, is not randomly drawn. It's called hand smoothing. In Arena, the odds of you drawing a good amount of land are much better than in reality. This makes for less mulligans all around, and it can also change the best number of lands from the real-life counterpart. Another much bigger element that changes from real life to Arena is what opponents you're facing. When you sit down for a game of Magic in the real world, be it at a tournament or against a casual stranger at a card store, you have no idea what your opponent is going to be playing. In Arena, that is not the case at all. The matchmaker will filter decks that you are allowed to play and decks that you are not allowed to play. Generally, I like the matchmaker because it means I can play a fun deck in play mode or even a starter deck and not have to face anything really strong. I'll face decks of equal power. But in a tournament setting, it's kind of a joke because you don't get appropriate exposure to the field. Say there's a really popular deck and 20% of the players at a tournament are playing it, and say you anticipated that and brought a deck that was a decent counter to it, that won't matter if the Arena matchmaker doesn't think you should be facing it. I found that my control decks mostly faced other control decks. The mono red deck was definitely the most severely restricted. It only faced 3 different decks in dozens of games. Mono white aggro, black blue rogues, and a ton of mirror matches. Another part of matchmaking that is hotly debated and controversial is player behavior profiling and monetary encouragement. The premise is that the game records your actions and then profiles your personality. Then it sets up games to inspire or manipulate that particular personality or psychology to spend money at the store. Some people, for example, think that hand smoothing isn't just with your starting hand, but rather extends to draws from your deck. That design improves player experience, so it would help to retain players and keep people playing more often. From my own experience, I can remember building a goblin deck a long time ago that had a lot of rares, and I remember being put against opponents that also had goblin decks but didn't have anything good in them. They were just mostly commons and weren't very strong decks. And I felt like I was almost showing them what is supposed to be in their deck. And then that in turn would encourage them to get those cards from the store. Whale hunting is another big concept. It's where the game identifies who the potentially big spenders are and then rope them into the game and keep them playing long enough to extract those dollars. Now, some people think that these profiling and manipulating systems are in the game, but some other people think that it's just conspiracy theories and none of these things are actually in the game at all. The truth is that nobody really knows which of these things are in the game and to what degree. The only people privy to that would be the actual game developers and the company managers, and they are certainly not going to publish the game code. I didn't know anything about profiling or manipulating algorithms for games until a few years ago. I was reading the patents put forward by Activision and Riot Games for similar systems of their own. The reality is that this has become a huge part of the business for video game makers that sell any kind of digital goods, especially mobile games, and it's not going anywhere. In my personal opinion, while I do think a lot of these claims in Arena are exaggerated or biased based on player perception or even just plain rage, I also think that it's very naive to think the company would never use these devices. It's a very large and important way to make money in the game industry where digital goods are concerned. The company definitely has a reputation and a history of being money first, and they've already done some pretty unscrupulous things in terms of hiding unwanted digital information in their game. I was really mad when I found out that they hid Red Shell spyware in their game client when I first downloaded it. So I would be pretty surprised if they're not using some kind of profiling or monetization algorithms in their game. I mean, if I was a shareholder, I would be insisting on having them. They are profitable, safe, and proven. So in terms of Mythic rank and competition, it doesn't bode very well when you're looking at rigged hands, rigged opponents, and the potential for other rigged algorithms. I mean, the words rigged and fair competition just don't go together. Like, they don't belong in the same sentence. I would hope that at a bare minimum, best of 3 at big events would be completely untampered with and kept pure. Now, getting back to ranking in Constructed, as I'm using my 4 decks, it doesn't take me very long to gravitate towards the aggro ones because they are a lot faster. Just to be clear, all I mean by aggro is a very quick deck. In this case, lots of cheap spells that you vomit onto the table in the first few turns of the game, hoping to deal 20 damage by around turn 5. This is all best of 1, so your win-loss ratio probably won't be that different than using a control deck. And the fact that you can play 3 or even 4 games with an aggro deck in the same amount of time it would take you to play just 1 game with a control deck, it's definitely an advantage to be playing aggro in terms of time saved. And given that there is a limited amount of time to get your rank. So here we have my last game before hitting Mythic. My opponent does his math wrong and taps out and attacks, even though he can see my simple counterattack the next turn will kill him just by looking at what's in play. Now, I'll admit that I was pretty rusty coming back from the game, and I did make a lot of mistakes, both in Limited and Constructed while I was ranking. But this just isn't very impressive play for what is supposed to be a high level. And I would add that I barely noticed a difference ranking through Platinum, Diamond, and Mythic, both in Limited and in Constructed. So I win the game, I get Mythic rank, and whoa, what's this? I'm rank number 29. How did that happen? When I got to Mythic in Limited, I was rank 1256, so closer to the tail end. That made me quite surprised when I finished Constructed at 29. Truthfully, I have no idea why it put me so high. Maybe it was because it was closer to the start of the season, so not many people were Mythic yet. Maybe it was because I had a winning streak in Diamond Tier 1. I don't think I lost a single game. So maybe it had something to do with the invisible MMR that the matchmaker doesn't show you. I have no idea. Now, in terms of time spent, it only took me 2 evenings playing Constructed to get to Mythic, all the way from Bronze 4. I played about 4 to 5 hours each evening, so it only took about 9 hours total to go from Bronze 4 to Mythic in Constructed. That is not a lot of time, and I would say that the overall difficulty was pretty easy. Like, just winning a tournament at your LGS would be a lot tougher than getting to Mythic on Arena. It's also worth a mention that there's a lot of junk articles out there spreading misinformation about the game or the ranking system. Here's one I came across that says it takes a minimum of 30 hours if you have a 100% win rate to achieve Mythic rank. That is just completely made up. That is totally false. I did it in 9 hours, and I certainly did not have a 100% win rate. I could do a whole other video just on junk articles, especially related to draft, but I'm just going to cut it short and say, don't believe everything you read. Now, comparing Limited to Constructed, the difference is massive. Like, it took me weeks to get to Mythic in Limited, and it took me 2 evenings in Constructed. So Limited takes a lot more time, and I would also say, in my opinion, it definitely takes a lot more skill as well. I think a mediocre player playing a very simple but effective deck in Constructed can easily achieve Mythic, whereas in Limited, I think they would have an extremely difficult time. So after getting Mythic, I pat myself on the back and go to bed. The next day, when I check my rank, I am shocked to see that it has decreased somehow. I didn't notice there was such thing as rank decay when I was playing Limited because it was right at the end of the season, but here in Constructed, it blew me away. Like, rank decay doesn't make any sense at all, and it just completely ruins any sense of competition. Any game that's worth its salt, where the ranking actually matters, will have a static ranking system where your rank doesn't change when you're not playing and will go up or down based on wins or losses and the MMR of your opponents. So my rank started at 29. The next morning it was 41. I then took a break for maybe about a week from the game, and when I came back it was like 400 and something. So rank decay means a few things. First and worst, it means there's no meaningful relative standing. For example, in an effective static system, my rank of 29 would mean that I am better than a player with a rank of, say, 300. But with the rank decay system, me just taking a short break from the game has put me well below them. And that wasn't based on wins, losses, or opponents you faced, or anything meaningful. So when you look at the standings, it's really just a fake indicator of how good a player actually is. I don't like Constructed, and I haven't played it at all since achieving Mythic, and I certainly wouldn't want to be playing it every day just to try and keep my rank and keep on top of the decay. I'm sure that there are a lot of really good players that would be very high ranked if the system was static, but the way it is now, you'll never know because a lot of those players won't play enough to stay on top of that decay. So the system is grossly over-rewarding time spent playing rather than player skill and ability, which completely undermines it as a fair gauge of what the competition actually is. I would even take it a step further and say that the only way to know who the best players in the world really are is to have a conventional static MMR based system that could maybe delist players after long periods of inactivity. So another problem with rank decay is that it forces you to play towards the end of the season versus the start. I don't know about you, but I don't like being forced into when I have to play the game. It's why I don't play qualifiers, and I'm fine with that, but qualifying for a qualifier I think should be up to the player when they want to play. It took about a week for my rank of 29 to tank to 400 and something, and 2 more weeks after that, so maybe about 3 weeks total, it had gone to a percentage I noticed, sitting at 90%, which means I had decayed out of the leaderboard and would no longer be qualifying for the next qualifier. I mean, that's pretty bad to be number 29 at the start and then having to come back and do it all over again because your rank decayed so much that you wouldn't even qualify at the end of the season. That is a really high rate of decay. So the last point I want to bring up is about gifted tournament spots. That's when people that were good in the past basically get a free ride to big events happening now. Or even in some cases inviting people that are just popular, like streamers, to the Invitational. I mean, I don't care if someone was good a long time ago, and I certainly don't care if someone is a popular streamer. I'm old school, and I think that everyone should have to grind for their spot. And I think it waters down the fairness of these competitions because they didn't need to succeed with the same card pools as the current qualifiers did. Now, in regards to the Mythic rank, what this means is you have a bunch of really skilled players that don't need to rank to qualify, meaning they don't exist as competition on the leaderboard, making it easier to get a high Mythic rank, and further demonstrating that those high ranks are just not representing the best players. So that pretty much wraps things up on my experience ranking to Mythic and what I have to say about the system as a whole. I'll add that I really like the Arena program overall, and I think it offers a lot to people even if they don't spend a dime on the game. I think I might do another video just on free-to-play and drafting. But until then, I hope you enjoy your next session of Magic, and thanks for watching.